we just want to do a friendly reminder that when you do ask a question in the chat, please address it to all participants so that everybody can see what is being asked. And the only thing I see at the moment is how much are the application fees? Do they vary based on the classification of license, or are they all standard? So the application itself is $450. And that's the same for everybody with an original contractor's license application. However, your initial license fee may be different based on the entity that you're applying for. But as far as the classification, one classification is included with the application, and it is $450. Okay, what if the owner builder work was too small to need a permit? So generally owner builder work, if you're applying for the B classification, because that is the only classification that you are allowed to use that owner builder project list form for. Owner builder is start to finish, ground up. It wouldn't necessarily qualify for the B if that's what you would be applying for, because most of your B work is going to need or require a permit with the city or the county. But this is case-by-case basis, and once a completed application is sent into CSLB, that's something that the processing technician will review and then make that determination. And that was for Craig. The first one was from Brandon. And then Brandon says, thank you very much for your time and the information and very well put together presentation. From Justin C, how many questions are in the test for the B general license? Unfortunately, Justin, that's something that I don't know offhand, but it's also something that is not released to the public. It is a multiple choice. It is on a computer. However, I cannot tell you how many questions that there are on the exams. From Tim, do certification with the state health department transfer over? State Water Control Board distribution license for plumbing experience. There is no transfer over of your certifications with a certain other state agency. What we require here at CSLB, because we license home improvement contractors. So if you have plumbing experience and this practical hands-on work experience in the plumbing field, you're more than welcome to apply. Your experience should be listed on your certification of work experience form, which is located within the original contractor license application. And you should have a certifier. So part 1, Tim, is what you as the applicant fill out, and part 2 is what your certifier would fill out, excuse me. And a certifier is anyone who has firsthand knowledge of your experience. And you'll see in part 2, line 7, there is a plethora of people you can choose from to be your certifier. It does not have to be an employer. That is one of our most common questions. There is, again, quite a few different options to choose from of who can be your certifier to put your experience on your certification of work experience. Corey says no audio. Is this a break? I believe there is audio now. I don't know what happened. So yeah, no break. As I believe it was stated in the presentation, you can always go back because we do archive these and put these on our YouTube page. If at any point there was a break in connection or whatnot, you could go back to this one, or there's several others from the past that are out there. Yumin Tang, I am planning to obtain a C36 license. Does my mechanical engineering bachelor and master degree give any credit to be counted as experience? So Yumin, as stated in the presentation, they gave you an overview of what a degree possibly could give you for education credit. However, CSLB cannot pre-qualify any applicant or licensee for that matter on their possible education credit or their work experience. So it gives you a general idea of what you could get for something that's related to the trade that you're applying for, but we can't give you a definitive answer on that. Craig says, thank you. From Joseph, is the license fee for a D39 also $450? So the application fee for the subcategory scaffolding D39 is $450. Again, the application fee will always be $450. The only thing that will change will be your ILF, which is your initial licensing fee, but that is based on the entity that you're applying for. So application fee is always $450. Justin C, okay, thank you. Human, I am currently taking the plumbing 1, 2, 3 classes in San Diego Continued Education College and will get certificate once the class is complete. Does this count as any experience? Again, this possibly could. However, once it is completed, you could submit that with your completed application and your associated application fee, and it will be determined and reviewed once we receive that here. Again, we cannot pre-qualify you for that. Does the plumbing work experience while working as a handyman count as experience? So again, this is human. Well, as a handyman, you may not be pulling a permit, which you would have to do to install, alter, or possibly repair a plumbing issue. So it could, but it's a possibility that it couldn't, because as a handyman, you're not allowed to do, and I believe that's what the city and the state, city and the county, you wouldn't be able to pull a permit. So you wouldn't be able to do the extensive, complete work that a C36 plumber could do. I mean, sure, maybe some of the less trades of that classification could have been learned as a handyman. But as far as what you would need for plumbing work and the permits, it might not be everything that is required. From Salvador, what if the certifier refused to fill out and sign the document? Well, Salvador, everybody has to have a certifier. Again, there are quite a few different individuals who can sign for this. And what a certifier is someone who has firsthand knowledge of the experience that's being claimed on the certificate of work experience. And they are the ones who's actually filling out the part that has the work experience. So if they're filling it out, they should be able to sign for you. It does not have to be an employer. It does not have to be a contractor. Again, someone who has firsthand knowledge. And you'll notice that in part 2, line 7 of the certification of work experience form. From 10, does water utility, industrial plumbing count? We service buildings as part of the job. It could, Tim, but plumbing, if I am not mistaken, is from the house to the sidewalk. So industrial plumbing, I'm not certain if that is out in the streets. You could, Tim, send an email over to classifications with an S at cslb.ca.gov and pose that question to our classification deputy. But he is going to want specific details of what's being performed, how it's being performed, where it's being performed. But you could probably get a better determination from him when you're stating it as water utility and industrial plumbing. So I would recommend that you go ahead and do that with your possible experience. And again, he's not going to, he can't pre-qualify you either. Nobody at CSLB can, but if you give him the details, he can tell you, yes, apply for the C36 because this would fall under this, these trades, or, you know what, this is an A instead, or this is, you know, pipelines. So please send an email with that information that I've stated to that classifications email. From Justin C, will there be a translator provided? So Justin, you do have the option to ask for a translator. When you fill out your application, there is a question there, and what'll happen is once your application is posted, which means it was deemed acceptable, you'll get a packet from our testing unit that will have a translator packet in it. And then that information is completed and sent into CSLB. We will review it, approve them, and allow them to be a translator for you if they meet the criteria. And I do believe you cannot use the same translator in case you do not pass the exams. You'd have to choose a different one. But you can request a translator, and that would be on the application. From Corey, I'm not seeing any activity except this chat. Is anyone else seeing any? I saw the presentation and I see the chat, so I'm not certain if anybody else is having an issue. Joseph says thank you. Corey says thank you. Fernando for B2 remodeling license is doing flips as the owner count is experience. It could, however, a B2 residential remodeling classification is 3 unrelated trades, and there is no structural component to that. So, as well as no, there is a limitation on what you could do as far as plumbing, your HVAC, no structural, and your electrical. So, if you were doing, for an example, let's say drywall, you were doing some cabinetry and doing painting, you know, those are 3 unrelated trades. Those could possibly be verifiable for you to apply for the B2 residential remodeling classification. However, again, as stated in the presentation, a minimum of 48 months of journey level practical work experience is what is needed. So if you've been doing it for 2 years, obviously that's not going to count towards your 4-year minimum requirements. So a minimum of 3 unrelated trades for 48 months. If you have that, you know, it's a possibility that that would give you that work experience. Ewan, thank you for the presentation and answering the questions. Tim, thank you very much for your help. Craig, for the B2, is it okay for your work experience was done out of state and your certifier lives out of state as well? Absolutely. So we fully expect to have out of state experience as well as out of country in some cases. So you are allowed to submit work experience as work experience as long as it meets the criteria of the classification being applied for. It is acceptable to be added to your certification of work experience form, and could possibly grant you, you know, the minimum experience requirements to go on to licensing. Justin C., thank you. I don't see any other questions at the moment, so I'll give you a few minutes if anybody wants to add another question in here. Again, please address it to all participants so that the panelists, everybody does get to see the questions. From Fernando, for a B2, do you need 3 different certifiers? If you, so okay, you have to have 48 months minimum journey level experience in the classification. You don't have to have 3 different certifiers if you worked for one person for that 48 months. If you had 3 different employers within that time, yes, you would want to separate those by dates with your employer or with your job or whatever project that you worked on. But not necessarily do you have to have 3 different certifiers. It just depends on your work experience and how it was obtained. Joseph, so it is a minimum. Let's see, what did you ask before, Joseph? For the license or for the application fee, yes, $450 is the application fee. There is no less application fee if you're asking about the monetary amount. Yuan Tang for C36 license, does apprentice experience count or it must be journey level experience, journeyman level experience. So if you have a completed apprenticeship in the classification that you're applying for, it can or it may also provide you education credit. It does have to be completed, however. If you're in the middle of it, we do not give credit for that. When it comes to a degree, it's a little different. If you have a degree and you've only taken classes, we can have our deputy look at the classes and see if any of those classes will allow for us to grant any education credit. So taking classes is a little different from apprenticeship. If the apprenticeship is not completed, there won't be any education credit granted. Joseph, sorry, typo. So is a minimum of 4 years experience, doesn't matter the license. So yes, minimum of 48 months, which is 4 years, journey level practical work experience in the classification that you're applying for. That's for any classification, for any applicant or licensee. Okay, do we have any other questions? And just again, to reiterate, these are archived and are on our YouTube page. And you can go back and look at past ones. And you know that it might be a little helpful. Sometimes we have a full, I don't want to say class, but a full range of individuals who have participated in the workshop. And sometimes there's not a lot, but each time there will be different questions asked. So it would benefit a lot of you if you have additional questions to go back and look at the archive versions of our workshop. And just in case English is not your first language, we also have it in Spanish. I believe the 3rd week of the month, but it is advertised on our webpage of when the Spanish workshop comes out versus when the English workshop comes out. And any question that you might not have wanted to ask or didn't ask at the time because it didn't come up, you can always send us an email at licensing@cslb.ca.gov. Please give us as much information as you can so we can make a informed answer for your questions. So I don't see any other questions coming in. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up for now.
Alrighty, thank you, Dana. So that's all the time we have today for our workshop. Thank you for all of your questions. If you have any other questions about your application, we encourage you to drop an email to our licensing division. And that email is on the screen right now. It's licensing@cslb.ca.gov. If at some point you need to reschedule your exam, you can get that process started by dropping email to exams with an S at cslb.ca.gov. We also put together a list of available resources for women considering a career in construction. If you haven't already, be sure to download this presentation to get them. You can download the presentation on the banner on the top of our homepage, www.cslb.ca.gov. If you're watching the archive video of this workshop on our YouTube page, you'll find a link to the presentation down below.
So we welcome your comments and topics for future webcasts. Just drop us an email at social@cslb.ca.gov. We want to give a special thanks to our licensing division and our public affairs office for their help on this workshop. The Get Licensed to Build workshop is a copyrighted production of the California Contractors State License Board, and we thank you for watching.